Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kris, this is Wizard Way, and today is Silmarillion Saturday. So, unlike usual, I will not be simul-streaming this on TikTok today, because I've been temporarily banned, just from doing lives for hateful content, apparently. Apparently me calling out people for being a-holes is considered hateful and deserves reprimand. I don't understand, but that's okay. So today we'll just be on Twitch and YouTube, but we are on chapter 19 of the Silmarillion. Very excited about this chapter. It has a lot of illustrations. This chapter is of Beren and Luthien, so this is the quintessential love story that Tolkien wrote, so we'll have a little bit of fun reading through that. As always, if there are questions, please pop them into chat. I am always happy to address questions as they come up. And I had wanted, now that I'm looking at my setup, I think I have my chat on the wrong window, so let's fix that. Let's fix that. As a small bit of random fun news, I finally got my keycaps in from Drop, so I now have a fully elvish keyboard. Which I'll have to show you guys at some point. Okay, how did I do this before where I had it in a separate window? Let's see. Where is the chat? Chat, please. Strange. Where's the chat? Of course, now it won't let me see anything. Okay. I'm like, what happened here? This is the way we need to do it, then that is the way we shall do it. There we go. Okay, that should work. Hey, there we go. Hello, Evil. Evil. No, you shouldn't be ultra confused. I try to at least fill people in if there's anything significant they might have missed. So today's story is it will be better self-contained than most, which is very helpful. Thank you so much for the sub, Lucas. But today is Beren and Luthien, so this tale, it's pretty self-contained, which is nice. So if you're just tuning in for the first time, this is a good one to tune in. Good morning. Good morning, Scone Mistress. Not a problem. You can turn me on in the background. You can lurk if you want to. You can lurk if you want to. Okay, let's get comfortable, shall we? So, as always, I'm going to switch things up so you guys can see what we're working with here. No problem, Scone, thank you. I know my voice is going to sound a little deep today. I've had a bit of phlegm going on. So this is definitely going to be chill. More chill than my last stream, for sure. And for everyone who tuned in during my live watch of the Super Bowl commercial, the teaser trailer for the Rings of Power. Thank you for supporting me. I had no idea at the time because I don't see my numbers here that are YouTube and Twitch. I only see the Twitch number. So I was like, oh cool, I've got like 15 people. Apparently on YouTube I peaked at over 400. So there were a lot of people in chat at one point, and things looked busy, but I was not aware that I was at 400. So thank you so much for all of the support. That was super cool. Honestly, those are the numbers I need. Say, gotta do a few more streams before I can turn my AdSense back on. Reapply to AdSense. It's a bummer that I missed out on that, like, right before that trailer dropped. Okay. Alright, looks like everything's set, so let's get started, shall we? Let's do it! Alright, I want you guys to see where we're starting off, and I'll catch you up on the last chapter in case you missed last week. Alright, so this is my beautiful 2021 illustrated deluxe edition of the Silmarillion. So, it does come with a really beautiful map of Beleriand. So every so often, if we're getting confused about what space we're talking about in the map, I'll pull this out and actually point to where we're talking about. Today's chapter, Beren and Luthien, will kind of go all over the place, but it at least starts in the Forest of Brethium, which is this area right here off the side of Doriath. So we'll read a little bit about Beren and then his meeting with Luthien and all of their adventures. Adventure! I love this copy of the Silm. It's so pretty. They're like, it's so bright though. Like, none of the other books are bright orange. I'm like, so? I like the bright colors. Alright, so today we're going to be reading Beren and Luthien. Hush, you? Who talked to you? Tinfang getting saucy back there. I have 3 what's-her-names in my house, and I named them after the 3 greatest bards in Tolkien's world. I'm a geek. If you didn't realize that already, I am a complete geek. So I have Tinfang in here, Dairon is in my living room, and Maglor is in my kitchen. Maglor's in my kitchen. Alright, so last week was a pretty eventful couple of chapters. We read of the coming of men into the west, and of the ruin of Beleriand, and the fall of Fingolfin. So, a lot happened, honestly. A lot went down. I don't know if I can sum that up really easily in a few sentences, but basically Morgoth, aka Melkor, he got impatient. Ooh, there we go. So Morgoth got impatient and decided to attack the elves before his forces were truly ready for it. If he had waited a little bit longer, Tolkien notes that he would have completely destroyed the elves. If he had just waited a little bit longer, they wouldn't have had the force to reckon with his armies. So, lucky for the elves, he attacked a little sooner than he should have. But it was still a very, very terrible time for the elves and their mortal men companions. So, unfortunately, severe losses on both sides. And Fingolfin, thinking that, the hour of their destruction was nigh, he rode out to Thangorudrim, which is the entrance into Angband, which is Sauron and Melkor's and Morgoth's stronghold, in Beleriand. And Fingolfin was like, you and me, bro, single combat, let's go. Single combat, right now, let's go. And Morgoth couldn't say no. He had to save face in front of his generals. So Melkor really didn't want to, but he went forth in single combat. In the process, Fingolfin, epic battle. Epic rap battle of history. Fingolfin has a tough time of it with Melkor. Eventually does fall. But in the process, he manages to cleave off Morgoth's foot and wound him 7 times. And this was like the last time that Melkor actually came out of his halls. He came out of Angband. It was the last time he did it, because at that point he was, missing a foot, and he was wounded all over the place, and it didn't look too good. He may have triumphed, technically, but it was not a clean victory. So Fingolfin was borne away by Throndur, the eagle, and his body was taken to his son Turgon, who is the king of Gondolin. Gondolin being the hidden realm. Gondolin actually translates to hidden rock, so accurate naming by Tolkien once again. Oh, hi Megs. So yeah, Turgon buried his father, and it was a sad time. We start getting a huge amount of attacks from Angband. We had a bunch of different areas where orcs were getting through the lines of defense, and so at this point, or at least at the end of the last chapter, we were to a point where, let me pull out the map so you guys can see the area that I'm talking about. Okay. So here is Beleriand. Book. Alright. Zoom. Alright, so Angband is up here past the top of the map. But we had a time during which this was called Ardgallen, just like a green field. It's the green earth. And when Melkor attacked, he sent out all of his fire drakes and balrogs and all that jazz into Ardgallen, and he set it on fire. So the entire huge field for leagues and leagues was just nothing but fire, scorching the side, of the sides of Ered Wethrin here, which is on the edge of Hifum. So orcs come spilling out into these areas. They go through the Feyenoor and take over Minas Tirith, the original Minas Tirith, which is on a little island called Tolsirion, which is Isle of the Great River. The Great River being the Sirion River that flows all the way down here and eventually into the Bay of Balar. So orcs take over the watchtower that is supposed to guard this pass. That's not good news. Orcs also come down through Luthien, and so this is where all the Sons of Feyenoor are currently. And so Caranthir is driven out of Thargalion, the orcs sully Lake Hellevorn, all sorts of badness ensuing down here. They did manage to hold them off at about the Askar River here. So Osiriand was safe, and Taurim Duinath down here, this big forest, is also safe. But really, everywhere down to Ramdal here, that's orc territory now, with the exception of Doriath, because Melian the Maya protects that area. So, yes. Sirion is in Beleriand. Yes, that is correct. That is correct. Starts up here, slowly works its way all the way down. It goes underground for a period right here, but then springs out again. So that is Sirion. There are three main north-south rivers in Beleriand, Sirion being the biggest one, thus it being called the Great River. Then we have the Narog, which is this one. Starts way up here, at Aethel Ivrin, which we'll hit when we talk about the Children of Húrin. But yeah, so the Narog eventually becomes a tributary into the Sirion. But that's another long river, and the third one is the River Galleon, which has two tributaries up here, and they join, and this goes all the way down off the map at the bottom. So, also a very large river. And that's where we get Osiriand, which is the land of 7 rivers. So, Galleon being 1, and then we have 6 horizontal. So, hopefully that answers your question. But yes, Mikey. Sirion is in Beleriand. But the area that we'll be most concerned with today is going to be Doriath. So in the chapters that we covered last week, we also learned a little bit about Barahir and Beren. So, band of mortal men, mostly in the service of Finrod Feligund. And Finrod in the battle where the orcs took Minas Tirith. Zoom in a little more if I can. Cool. So there's Tol Sirion and the watchtower of Minas Tirith. But Minas Tirith gets taken over by the orcs. In that battle, things aren't looking so good, and all of the orcs surround King Finrod. Finrod Feligund is the king of Nargothrond, down here. But, you know, all of the forces were headed up here to try and make sure the orcs couldn't take it over. They failed. So Finrod gets, you know, encased by orcs, and luckily this small band of men, what few of them are left, I believe there were only 12 of them, 12 or 13 of them, they managed to hem King Finrod and save him. They got him out of there. So in thanks, Finrod gave Barahir his ring, and basically said, if you ever need my help, you or any of your kin, if you or your descendants need my help, this is the sign that you can give, and I will absolutely help you. No questions asked. I owe you my life. I will help you. So Barahir takes this ring, and eventually more badness happens. Barahir's entire company is slain. The only one that's left is his son Beren. So that was the end of the chapters that we finished last week, is Beren survives, but that's about it. And this is in the Forest of Brethium, is where this happens. This band of men was mostly hanging out in here. But because this is not covered by the Girdle of Melian, which is the magical enchantment that the Maya put over Doriath, because the Forest of Brethium is not in the Girdle of Melian, the mortal men that were in here were just battling the orcs as they were spilling out through the pass there. Hi Khalil, welcome. Yes, this is the same ring of Barahir that is eventually passed down to Aragorn. Correct. You beat me to it. So this is the ring of Barahir. So hopefully that gives us a good base to work from, and we can start reading now. Okay. Let me get some more water. I really need to stay hydrated today. Alrighty. As always, when I hit illustrations, I will try to share them. This is a bit of a longer chapter, and there are a lot of pictures in it, which is the fun part. I will try to do some of my voice effects for the various characters, but I make no guarantees because there's going to be a lot of dialogue in this one. So I think for main people, I will try. But there are so many active speaking characters in this chapter that I might let it go. I might let it go. Let me page through really quickly. Well, we'll take it as it comes, but I'll attempt to do the VFX for you guys. Because I love you. Okay. There we go. All right. Let's begin. Chapter 19 of Beren and Luthien. Among the tales of sorrow and of ruin that come down to us from the darkness of those days, there are yet some in which amid weeping there is joy, and under the shadow of death, light that endures. And of these histories, most fair still in the ears of the elves is the tale of Beren and Luthien. Of their lives was made the Lay of Luthien, release from bondage, which is the longest save of the songs concerning the world of old. But here the tale is told in fewer words and without song. And just as a note, the Lay of Luthien is written in full in Book 3 of the History of Middle-earth series. So that book is called The Lays of Beleriand. And the Lay of Luthien is in there, a couple different versions of it. I will eventually be streaming myself reading the Lays of Beleriand. I really like Tolkien's poetry. So, no song today. Maybe next time. Okay. It has been told that Barahir would not forsake Dorthonion, and there Morgoth pursued him to the death, until at last there remained to him only 12 companions. Now the forest of Dorthonion rose southward into mountainous moors, and in the east of those highlands there lay a lake, Tarn Eluin, with wild heaths about it, and all that land was pathless and untamed, for even in the days of the long peace none had dwelt there. But the waters of Tarn Eluin were held in reverence, for they were clear and blue by day, and by night were a mirror for the stars, and it was said that Melian herself had hallowed that water in days of old. Thither Barahir and his outlaws withdrew, and there made their lair, and Morgoth could not discover it. But the rumor of the deeds of Barahir and his companions went far and wide, and Morgoth commanded Sauron to find them and destroy them. I need to shift a little bit, sorry guys. Okay. Gotta get comfy, you know? Now among the companions of Barahir was Gorlim, son of Angrim. His wife was named Eiliniel. His wife was named Eilinel, and their love was great, ere evil befell. But Gorlim, returning from the war upon the marches, found his house plundered and forsaken, and his wife gone. Whether slain or taken he knew not. Then he fled to Barahir and his companions. And of his companions he was the most fierce and desperate, but doubt gnawed his heart, thinking that perhaps Eilunel was not dead. At times he would depart alone and secretly, and visit his house that still stood amid the fields and woods he had once possessed, and this became known to the servants of Morgoth. On a time of autumn he came in the dusk of evening, and drawing near, he saw as he thought a light at the window, and coming warily he looked within. There he saw Eilunel, and her face was worn with grief and hunger, and it seemed to him that he heard her voice lamenting that he had forsaken her. But even as he cried aloud, the light was blown out of the window, blown out in the wind. Wolves howled, and on his shoulders he felt suddenly the heavy hands of Sauron's hunters. Thus Gorlim was ensnared, and taking him to their camp they tormented him, seeking to learn the hidings of Barahir and all his ways. But nothing would Gorlim tell. Then they promised him that Then they promised him that he should be released and restored to Eilunel if he would yield. And being at last worn with pain and yearning for his wife, he faltered. Then straightway they brought him into the dreadful presence of Sauron, and Sauron said,
I hear now that thou wouldst barter with me. What is thy price?
And Gorlim answered that he should find Eilunel again, and with her be set free, for he thought that Eilunel also had been made captive. Then Sauron smiled, saying,
That is a small price for so great a treachery. So shall it surely be. Say on.
Now Gorlim would have drawn back, but daunted by the eyes of Sauron, he told at last all that he would know. Then Sauron laughed, and he mocked Gorlim, and revealed to him that he had seen only a phantom devised by wizardry to entrap him, for Eilunel was dead.
Nevertheless, I will grant thy prayer,
said Sauron.
And thou shalt go to Eilunel, and be set free of my service.
Then he put him cruelly to death. Sorry about that, I fumbled with my filters there. Glad you like the voices. They're kind of a little ridiculous on purpose. So, just to recap, in case the pauses were a little confusing, Gorlim thought he saw his wife. He was captured by Sauron, and Sauron was like, "So, we'll give you back to your wife. We'll reunite you. We'll reunite you with your wife if you tell us where Barahir is, and your entire band and all their secrets." And Gorlim, being really frickin' tired and having been tortured for a while, gave in. And Sauron's just like, "That's your price?" Like, that's a small price. Like, you don't understand how small that price is for how great a treachery you are committing. But Gorlim was basically tricked and then put to death. Sauron doesn't mess around. Sauron lies, like we should know this by now. We should know this. So then he puts Gorlim cruelly to death. So it's not even a swift death. Like, Sauron's like a cat. He plays with his prey. So Sauron put him cruelly to death. In this way, the hiding of Barahir was revealed, and Morgoth drew his net about it. And the orcs, coming in the still hours before dawn, surprised the men of Dorthonion and slew them all, save one. For Beren, son of Barahir, had been sent by his father on a perilous errand to spy upon the ways of the enemy, and he was far afield when the lair was taken. But as he slept benighted in the forest, he dreamed that carrion birds sat thick as leaves upon bare trees beside a mere, and blood dripped from their beaks. Then Beren was aware of in his dream of a form that came to him across the river, and it was a wraith of Gorlum, and it spoke to him, declaring his treachery and death, and bade him make haste to warn his father. Then Beren awoke and sped through the night and came back to the lair of the outlaws on the second morning. But as he drew near, the carrion birds rose from the ground and sat in the alder trees beside Tarn Eilwyn, and croaked in mockery. There Beren buried his father's bones and raised a cairn of boulders above him, and swore upon it an oath of vengeance. First, therefore, he pursued the orcs that had slain his father and his kinsmen, and he found their camp by night at Reveal's Well, above the fen of Serech, and because of his woodcraft, he came near to their fire unseen. There their captain made boast of his deeds, and he held up the hand of Barahir that he had cut off as a token for Sauron that their mission was fulfilled, and the ring of Feligund was on that hand. Then Beren sprang from behind a rock and slew the captain, and taking the hand and the ring, he escaped, being defended by fate, for the orcs were dismayed and their arrows wild. We'll pause there for a moment. Yeah, not more oaths. This one turns out okay. For the heroes, not for Sauron. Not more oaths, come on. But there's your answer of the ring of Barahir. So they took Barahir's hand as a trophy with the ring still on it, which is gruesome. And poor Beren, because he had already buried his father's bones. Like, how distraught. It's like, you see the skeleton, you see that there's a hand missing. And he's like, oh bitch, it's on. It is on. We going. I'm gonna get all the bits back, because how dare. But he does recover the ring. It's kind of the important thing. He recovers the ring. The ring is not lost to the forces of Sauron, okay? And there was a bit of mention of locations, so let me show you that, and then I'll show you the illustration as well. So let's do that. Okay. So, oops. I need to scoot over a little bit. So the place we're currently talking about is the Forest of Brethium, which is right here. And he pursued the orcs up through the pass here and past Minas Tirith all the way to the Fens of Serech. So this is where he finally caught up with the orcs. I just wanted to at least show you guys where we're talking about on the map. So that should do that, and I'll show you the illustration. There we go. That's a really pretty one. All illustrations in this version are by Ted Nasmith. And so this would be the lake that mirrors the stars. So the Eilwyn. Can anyone enter into Doriath, or does the girdle prevent that? It prevents that. And it's not even Melian herself who makes the decision. The girdle is to Thingol's will. So anyone Thingol doesn't want in his forest can't get in, with the sole exception of Beren, and we'll get to that. Melian warned of that in, I think, last week's chapters. Because Thingol's kind of like, ew, mortal men are gross. Men are stupid and I don't respect them. Except in Thingol's voice, so more like,
Men are stupid and I don't respect them.
He thinks very poorly of men. And so he's like, yeah, I'm just not gonna allow any men into my forest. You can go into Brethium and stay there as long as you protect that side of Doriath. You're basically cannon fodder. They'll kill you before they get to us. He's like, I like this plan. Oh yeah, major douche vibes from Thingol. But he's like, I like this plan. They'll kill you first. But he won't allow any men into Doriath proper past the girdle. But Melian says, well, whether you will it or not, one person will get through. She's like, there will be one that by your will or mine will not be waylaid. Like, he will be able to get through because his fate will be stronger than my power. And that's kind of saying a lot with Amaya. So let me look and see what they call this plate quickly. This is at Tarn Ailuin. At Tarn Ailuin. You can see the men down here. I'm sorry my camera isn't the highest quality up there. Really pretty, though. I wouldn't mind living by that lake. Would I say Melian is more powerful than Saruman or Gandalf? Yes. I would. Personal opinion. Because Melian is specifically said to be, like, one of the greatest of the Maiar in enchantments. So, I would say yes. Okay. You bet the lake has loons. I have some, I have a couple kinds of doves in my new house. Not in, but, you know, around my new house. And, they were doing that coo that they like to do. They do it in the morning and then in the evening. You know, the woo, 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 woo. We get a lot of them here. I could totally hear the loons, just sort of that echo of them across the really still water. Can you imagine when this particular lake freezes over? All the strange sounds that you can hear, like, going underneath the ice when it's like a really clear, still surface. So cool. I would totally ice skate on that. But let us continue. So Beren got the hand of his father back and recovered the ring of Barahir, or Finrod's ring. Thereafter, for 4 years more, Beren wandered still upon Dorthonion, a solitary outlaw. But he became the friend of birds and beasts, and they aided him, and did not betray him. And from that time forth he ate no flesh, nor slew any living thing that was not in the service of Morgoth. He did not fear death, but only captivity, and being bold and desperate, he he escaped both death and bonds, and the deeds of lonely daring that he achieved were noised abroad throughout Beleriand, and the tale of them came even into Doriath. At length, Morgoth set a price upon his head, no less than the price upon the head of Fingon, the High King of the Noldor. But the orcs fled rather at the rumor of his approach than sought him out. Therefore an army was sent against him under the command of Sauron, and Sauron brought werewolves, fell beasts inhabited by dreadful spirits that he had imprisoned in their bodies. And all that land was now become filled with evil, and all clean things were departing from it. And Beren was pressed so hard that at last he was forced to flee from Dorthonion. In time of winter and snow he forsook the land and grave of his father, and climbing into the high regions of Gorgoroth, the Mountains of Terror, he descried afar the land of Doriath. Of course, now I'm remembering where Dorthonion is, so I actually showed you the wrong portion of the map. He's not in Brethil yet, he was in Dorthonion. I'll point it out next time I pull out the map. I'm like, wait, he's at Ered Gorgoroth? So, my mistake. I'll show you guys. Okay, so he descries from afar the land of Doriath. There it was put into his heart that he would go down into the hidden kingdom, where no mortal foot had yet trodden. Terrible was his southward journey. Sheer were the precipices of Ered Gorgoroth. That one always gets me. Sheer were the precipices of Ered Gorgoroth, and beneath their feet were shadows that were laid before the rising of the moon. Beyond lay the wilderness of Dungorthep, where the sorcery of Sauron and the power of Melian came together, and horror and madness walked. There spiders of the fell race of Ungoliant abode, spinning their unseen webs in which all living things were snared. And monsters wandered there that were born in the long dark before the sun, hunting silently with many eyes. No food for elves or men was there in that haunted land, but death only. That journey is not accounted least amongst the great deeds of Beren, but he spoke of it to no one after, lest the horror return into his mind. And none know how he found a way, and so came by paths that no man nor elf else ever dared to tread, to the borders of Doriath. And he passed through the mazes that Melian wove about the kingdom of Thengel, even as she had foretold, for a great doom lay upon him. I want to point out really briefly that Let me show you the map, because this is something that I want to illustrate. Okay. So, my bad earlier. For whatever reason, I thought he was already in the Forest of Brethium down here. He was up here in Dorthonion, aka Tower na Fuin. And they did mention Rivel's Well, and here's Ailwin. So that's the lake, Tarn Ailwin. The lake that we had the illustration of. So, my bad. Sorry, guys. But this is where the band of men were for a time. Trying to defend it from Sauron didn't work so well. So when he follows the orcs to the Fens of Serek, it's actually through here rather than through here. So, wanted to correct my mistake there, sorry. So eventually he comes down into Nandungorthep, which is at the edge of Ered Gorgoroth. Now this is the same area where previously we had... Actually, is this about the same time? I would have to double check my timelines to be sure, but this is the same pass that gave Arethel such trouble with her small escort from Gondolin. She was like, I want to go all the way over into Himlad. I want to visit the sons of Feyenoor, my kin. Her guard was like, what? Like, we're supposed to take you here. Like, girl. We're supposed to take you to Dor Lomin. What are you doing? And she's like, follow me or not, I'm going. So this was in the chapter about Maeglin. So she wanders through here and gets lost. And her entire escort loses her, and they eventually return back to Gondolin. But she wanders around here for a while, and finally makes it through and goes to Nan Elmoth. But it's the same treacherous pass, where you have the Girdle of Melian protecting the Forest of Doriath here, but then this area here, Ered Gorgoroth, has all of the giant spiders that were descended from Ungoliant, and in general, this area at this point is under Sauron's control. So it's not a happy place. Find a happy place. Find a happy place. Not a happy place. Hopefully that corrects things and gives you guys a visual. Okay. Now we can continue. I haven't seen the notifications for the Honor the Vala of Water yet, but trying to stay hydrated. Okay, so even as Melian had foretold in previous chapters, that there's one man who will make it through all the mazes and all the enchantments, because I won't be able to stop him. And Beren is that man. Okay. It is told in the Lay of Luthien that Beren came stumbling into Doriath, grey and bowed as with many years of woe. So great had been the torment of the road. But wandering in the summer in the woods of Neldoreth, he came upon Luthien, daughter of Thingol and Melian, at a time of evening under moonrise, as she danced upon the unfading grass in the glades beside Escalduin. Then all memory of his pain departed from him, and he fell into an enchantment, for Luthien was the most beautiful of all the children of Iluvatar. Blue was her raiment, as the unclouded heaven, but her eyes were grey as the starlit evening. Her mantle was sown with golden flowers, but her hair was dark as the shadows of twilight. As the light upon the leaves of trees, as the voice of clear waters, as the stars above the mists of the world, such was her glory and her loveliness, and in her face was a shining light. But she vanished from his sight, and he became dumb as one that is bound under a spell, and he strayed long in the woods, wild and wary as a beast, seeking for her. In his heart he called her Tinuviel, that signifies nightingale, daughter of twilight, in the grey elven tongue, for he knew no other name for her. And he saw her afar as leaves in the wind of autumn, and in winter as a star upon a hill, but a chain was upon his limbs. There came a time near dawn, on the eve of spring, and Luthien danced upon a green hill, and suddenly she began to sing. Keen, heart-piercing was her song, as the song of the lark that rises from the gates of night and pours its voice among the dying stars, seeing the sun behind the walls of the world. And the song of Luthien released the bonds of winter, and the frozen waters spoke, and flowers sprang from the cold earth where her feet had passed. Then the spell of silence fell from Beren, and he called to her, crying, Tinuviel, and the woods echoed her name. Then she halted in wonder and fled no more, and Beren came to her. But as she looked But as she looked on him, doom fell upon her, and she loved him. Yet she slipped from his arms and vanished from his sight, even as the day was breaking. Then Beren lay upon the ground in a swoon, as one slain at once by bliss and grief, and he fell into a sleep, as it were, into an abyss of shadow, and waking he was cold as stone, and his heart barren and forsaken. And wandering in mind, he groped as one that is stricken with sudden blindness, and seeks with hands to grasp the vanished light. Thus he began the payment of anguish for the fate that was laid on him, and in his fate Luthien was caught, and being immortal, she shared in his mortality. And being free, received his chain. And her anguish was greater than any of the Eldalie has known. Pardon me. Struggling a little with the reading today. So there you have the initial meeting. Hey, welcome, Larson. Hi, Eli. Welcome, guys. Trying to determine if Luthien could be classified as a cougar. I mean, technically, she's not super young at this point. She was born relatively quickly after Thingol and Melian got together. She's been there for a while. But Doriath is very insular. You know, Thingol doesn't want anybody else coming in, and he certainly won't let his daughter leave. But I do have another illustration I can share, so let's do that very quickly, and then we'll continue. So this one's more vertical. Let me switch this up. There we go. That's better. A little bit more. So you can see Luthien in the moonlight in the background. In the enchanted forest. And Beren is immediately struck by her beauty and falls into a swoon. And despite him being, you know, haggard and like some crazy wild beast in the woods, Luthien's just like, he kind of cute though. Let's zoom in a bit. He kind of cute though. I can't help myself. He just kind of cute. I don't know. Hello, Gwen. Yeah, the dude is the one to fall into a swoon. Yeah, Luthien's fine. And I mean that in both senses. Like, she's okay. She's like, ooh, I'm about to get in a lot of trouble. I think that's more what's going through her head. Where Beren's like, She's like, you look kind of wild, but you cute though. I like a bad boy. She's fine. But she's also like, she fine. She knows it. She knows it. No doubt in her mind. She knows she fine. All right, let's continue. She fine. Oh yeah, she like him scruffy. He's a bit beyond scruffy at this point. But I mean, accurate. Accurate though. Oh, That would have made me happy, but no, unfortunately that's not correct. You thought Beren and Luthien were both guys. I mean, it would be par for the course with Tolkien, right? There's very, very few female characters. There are very few female characters. And I would have been like, oh, the great love of the ages, and it happens to be a queer relationship? No. Unfortunately, no. This specific relationship was modeled after him and his wife. This was like him wanting to tell a love story based on them. He based Luthien on his wife. This is self-insert fan fiction, okay? This is a self-insert story. Luthien is your classic Mary Sue. She was Mary Suing before Mary Suing was Mary Suing. It is a super cute story, though, not gonna lie. Ooh, you're starting to read it on Tuesday. Good luck. If you need help, I'm currently editing. I am editing my previous streams, so I'm hoping to get those uploaded pretty soon. So if you want to listen to someone read through it, especially if you want to hear me the way I pronounce all of the names, you are free to do that. Yeah, it's cringy, but kind of sweet. I mean, at least he loved his wife. It's kind of cute. Okay, where were we? Okay. Here we go. Beyond his hope, she returned to him, where he sat in darkness, and long ago in the hidden kingdom she laid her hand in his. Thereafter often she came to him, and they went in secret through the woods together from spring to summer, and no others of the children of Iluvatar have had joy so great, though the time was brief. But Daeron the minstrel also loved Luthien, and he espied her meetings with Beren and betrayed them to Thengel. Then the king was filled with anger, for Luthien he loved above all things, setting her above all the princes of the elves, whereas mortal men he did not even take into his service. Therefore he spoke in grief and amazement to Luthien, but she would reveal nothing, until he swore an oath to her that he would neither slay Beren nor imprison him. But he sent his servants to lay hands on him and lead him into Menegroth as a malefactor. And Luthien, forestalling them, led Beren herself before the throne of Thingol, as if he were an honored guest. Then Thingol looked upon Beren in scorn and anger, but Melian was silent.
"Who are you?"
said the king.
"That come thither as a thief, and unbidden dare to approach my throne?"
But Beren, being filled with dread, for the splendor of Menegroth and the majesty of Thingol were very great, answered nothing. Therefore Luthien spoke and said, "He is Beren, son of Barahir,
Lord of men, mighty foe of Morgoth, the tale of whose deeds is become a song even among the elves."
"Let Beren speak,"
said Thingol.
"What would you here, unhappy mortal, and for what cause have you left your own land to enter this, which is forbidden to such as you? Can you show reason why my power should not be laid upon you in heavy punishment for your insolence and folly?"
Then Beren, looking up, beheld the eyes of Luthien, and his glance went also to the face of Melian, and it seemed to him that words were put into his mouth. Fear left him, and the pride of the eldest house of men returned to him, and he said, "My fate, O king,
led me hither through perils such as few even of the elves would dare, and here I have found what I sought not indeed, but finding I would possess forever. For it is above all gold and silver, and beyond all jewels, neither rock nor steel, nor the fires of Morgoth, nor all the powers of the elven kingdoms shall keep from me the treasure that I desire. For Luthien, your daughter, is the fairest of all the children of the world.
Then silence fell upon the hall, for those that stood there were astounded and afraid, and they thought that Beren would be slain. But Thingol spoke slowly, saying,
Death you have earned with these words, and death you should find suddenly had I not sworn an oath in haste, of which I repent, base-born mortal, who in the realm of Morgoth has learnt to creep in secret as his spies and thralls.
Then Beren answered,
Death you can give me, earned or unearned, but the names I will not take from you of baseborn, nor spy, nor thrall. By the ring of Feligund that he gave to Barahir my father on the battlefield of the north, my house has not earned such names from any elf, be he king or no.
His words were proud, and all eyes looked upon the ring, for he held it now aloft, and the green jewels gleamed there that the Noldor had devised in Valinor. For this ring was like to twin serpents, whose eyes were like emeralds, precious. For this ring was like to twin serpents, whose eyes were emeralds, and their heads met beneath a crown of golden flowers, that the one upheld and the other devoured. That was the badge of Finarfin and his house. Then Melian leaned to Thingol's side and in whispered counsel bade him forego his wrath.
For not by you,
she said,
shall Beren be slain, and far and free does his fate lead him in the end, yet it is wound with yours. Take heed.
But Thingol looked in silence upon Luthien, and he thought in his heart, Unhappy men, children of little lords and brief kings, shall such as these lay hands on you and yet live? Then, breaking his silence, he said,
I see the ring, son of Barahir, and I perceive that you are proud and deem yourself mighty. But a father's deeds, even had his service been rendered to me, avail not to win the daughter of Thingol and Melian. See now, I too desire a treasure that is withheld, for rock and steel and the fires of Morgoth keep the jewel that I would possess against all the powers of the elf kingdoms. Yet I hear you say that bonds such as these do not daunt you. Go your way, therefore. Bring to me in your hand a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown, and then, if she will, Luthien may set her hand in yours. Then you shall have my jewel, and though the fate of Arda lie within the Silmarils, yet you shall hold me generous.
Thus he wrought the doom of Doriath, and was ensnared within the curse of Mandos. And those that heard these words perceived that Thingol would save his oath, and yet send Beren to his death. For they knew that not all the power of the Noldor, before the siege was broken, had availed even to see from afar the shining Silmarils of Feyenoor. For they were set in the Iron Crown, and treasured in Angband above all wealth, and balrogs were about them, and countless swords, and strong bars, and unassailable walls, and the dark majesty of Morgoth. But Beren laughed.
For little price,
he said.
do elven kings sell their daughters for gems and things made by craft. But if this is your will, Thingol, I will perform it. And when we meet again, my hand shall hold a Silmaril from the Iron Crown, for you have not looked the last upon Beren, son of Barahir."
Then he looked in the eyes of Melian, who spoke not, and he bade farewell to Luthien to Nuviel, and bowing before Thingol and Melian, he put aside the guards about him, and departed from Menegroth alone. Then at last Melian spoke, and she said to Thingol,
"O king, you have devised cunning counsel, but if my eyes have not lost their sight, it is ill for you, whether Beren fail in this errand or achieve it, for you have doomed either your daughter or yourself. And now is Doriath drawn within the fate of a mightier realm."
But Thingol answered,
"I sell not to elves or men, those whom I love and cherish above all treasure. And if there were hope or fear that Beren would come ever back alive to Menegroth, he should not have looked again upon the light of heaven, though I had sworn it."
But Luthien was silent, and from that hour she sang not again in Doriath. A brooding silence fell upon the woods, and the shadows lengthened in the kingdom of Thingol. I'll pause there for a second, catch up on chat. Oh, okay, no new chat. Cool. I thought I saw things moving, I guess it was just me. So quite the exchange there between Thingol, Melian, Luthien, and Beren. Hopefully all of my voice filters worked when they were supposed to. So Beren's just like, bro, like, you're selling your daughter for a freaking jewel? What is wrong with you? Meanwhile, Thingol's just like, it'll never frickin' happen. Like, I can say this, but it's never gonna happen. He's never gonna make it out alive with a Silmaril. Like, it's totally impossible. And my mind just went to a Rodgers and Hammerstein song, "Impossible. Things are happening every day." No problem. I'm glad it's enthralling. It means I'm doing a good job. So Melian's just like, "You're gonna have to eat these words, sir." And he's like, "Whatever. It's gonna be fine. Everything's fine." But then Luthien stops singing and he's like, "Maybe I did it bad. Maybe I did it bad." Okay, let's see where we're at in relation to everything else. Ooh, girl. At the current pace, we are not going to make it through this chapter. I thought that that might be the case, though, so let me see where we want to make a goal of stopping. Okay, I think that's where I'll stop. Okay. I at least know where we're going to stop for the day. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's continue. I didn't skip anything, did I? No, I did not. Okay. Making sure I didn't miss any illustrations. Honestly, this chapter has more illustrations than any other chapter in the book. Everyone loves Beren and Luthien. Alright, let's continue. Actually, water first. Always. Okay. It is told in the Lay of Luthien that Beren passed through Doriath unhindered, and came at length to the region of the Twilight Mares and the fens of Sirion, and leaving Thingol's land, he climbed the hills above the falls of Sirion, where the river plunged underground with great noise. Thence he looked westward, and through the mist and rains that lay upon those hills he saw Talath Dirnin, the guarded plain, stretching between Sirion and Narog, and beyond he descried afar the highlands of Taur and Faroth. I'm messing up my Elvish pronunciation. Taur and Faroth, that rose above Nargothrond. And being destitute without hope or counsel, he turned his feet thither. Upon all that plain the elves of Nargothrond kept unceasing watch, and every hill upon its borders was crowned with hidden towers, and through all its woods and fields archers ranged secretly and with great craft. Their arrows were sure and deadly, and nothing crept there against their will. Therefore, ere Beren had come far upon this road, they were aware of him, and his death was nigh. But knowing his danger, he held aloft the ring of Feligund, and though he saw no living thing, because of the stealth of the hunters, he felt that he was watched, and he cried often aloud,
I am Beren, son of Barahir, friend of Feligund. Take me to the king.
Therefore the hunters slew him not, but assembling, they waylaid him and commanded him to halt. But seeing the ring, they bowed before him, though he was in evil plight, wild and wayworn. And they led him northward and westward, going by night, lest their paths should be revealed. For at that time there was no ford or bridge or the river over the river. For at that time there was no ford or bridge over the torrent of Narog before the gates of Nargothrond. But further to the north, where Ginglith joined Narog, the flood was less, and crossing there and turning again southward, the elves led Beren under the light of the moon to the dark gates of their hidden halls. Thus Beren came before King Finrod Feligund, and Feligund knew him, needing no ring to remind him of the kin of Beor and of Barahir. Behind closed doors they sat, and Beren told of the death of Barahir, and of all that had befallen him in Doriath, and he wept, recalling Luthien and their joy together. But Feligund heard this tale in wonder and disquiet, and he knew that the oath he had sworn was come upon him for his death, as long before he had foretold to Galadriel. He spoke then to Beren in heaviness of heart.
It is plain that Thingol desires your death, but it seems that this doom goes beyond his purpose, and that the oath of Feyenoor is again at work. For the Silmarils are cursed with an oath of hatred, and he that even names them in desire moves a great power from slumber, and the sons of Feyenoor would lay all the elven kingdoms in ruin, rather than suffer any other than themselves to win or possess a Silmaril. For the oath drives them. And now Celegorm and Curufin are dwelling in my halls, and though I, Finarfin's son, am king, they have won a strong power in the realm, and lead many of their own people. They have shown friendship to me in every need, but I fear that they will show neither love nor mercy to you if your quest be told. Yet my own oath holds, and thus we are all ensnared.
Then King Feligund spoke before his people, recalling the deeds of Barahir and his vow, and he declared that it was laid upon him to aid the son of Barahir in his need, and he sought the help of his chieftains. Then Celegorm arose amid the throng, and drawing his sword, he cried,
Be he friend or foe, Whether demon of Morgoth, or elf, or child of men, or any other living thing in Arda, neither law nor love nor league of hell, nor might of the Valar, nor any power of wizardry shall defend him from pursuing hate of Feanor's sons. If he take or find a Silmaril and keep it. For the Silmarils we alone claim until the world ends.
Many other words he spoke, as potent as were long before in Tirion the words of his father that first inflamed the Noldor to rebellion. And after Celegorm, Curufin spoke, more softly, but with no less power, conjuring in the minds of the elves a vision of war and the ruin of Nargothrond. So great a fear did he set in their hearts that never after until the time of Turin would any elf of that realm go into open battle, but with stealth and ambush, with wizardry and venomed dart they pursued all strangers, forgetting the bonds of kinship. Thus they fell from the valor and freedom of the elves of old, and their land was darkened. 'Cause that's what happens when you follow the Feyenorians, yo. That's what happens. These brothers are crazy. Yes, they are. And now they murmured that Finarfin's son was not as a Vala to command them, and they turned their faces from him. But the curse of Mandos came upon the brothers, and dark thoughts arose in their hearts, thinking to send forth Feligund alone to his death, and to usurp, it might be, the throne of Nargothrond. For they were of the eldest line of the princes of the Noldor. And Feligund, seeing that he was forsaken, took from his head the silver crown of Nargothrond and cast it at his feet, saying,
Your oaths of faith to me you may break, but I must hold my bond. Yet if there be any on whom the shadow of our curse has not yet fallen, I should find at least a few to follow me, and should not go hence as a beggar that is thrust from the gates.
There were 10 that stood by him, and the chief of them, who was named Edrahil, stooped, lifting the crown, and asked that it be given to a steward until Feligund's return. For you remain my king, and theirs, he said, whatever betide. Then Feligund gave the crown of Nargothrond to Orodreth, his brother, to govern in his stead, and Celegorm and Curufin said nothing, but they smiled and went from the halls. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia theme plays. Yeah, when will the elves learn, indeed? Well, certainly never with the sons of Feyenoor. Not these two. Celegorm and Curufin are like the worst of the lot, if you ask me. Honestly, like, these are my least favorite Feyenorians. Celegorm's a jerk. Celegorm the Fair, he's known as. Which unfortunately means a lot of people draw him as being blonde. That's not what fair means. They don't mean fair as in fair-haired, they just mean fair as in beautiful. He's a pretty man. He's pretty in face. Dude bro thinks he's the shit. I hate Celegorm and Curufin. He is totally a fuckboy. He is like the fuckboy of the Feyenorians. It's so accurate though. He totally is. So would that make him a fool of a fook? Fool of a fook. I hate Celegorm. Celegorm's totally a Chad. Yes, Curufin is Celebrimbor's father. That is correct. but Celebrimbor's mother did not follow them into exile, so Celebrimbor is already born and grown, but he has nothing to do with his father. Yeah, fair definitely doesn't mean he plays fair. He does not. He never does. But Celegorm is the hunter of the group. Like, he really liked hunting. So he's the sporty one. I'm just thinking of Cinderfella. He's the one that would play polo, okay? Like, Celegorm's like, the gentleman's sport. Fucking Chad. Daddy issues all around. Absolutely. Every single one of the Feyenorians has got daddy issues. Every single, like literally every single one of them. Feyenoor had daddy issues because his father remarried after the death of his mother, so that was fun for him. Emotional damage. He is a jock. Yeah, Celegorm is a jock. There's a reason I hate him. I was not in the jocks group ever. I was in the marching band, okay? Like, I'm on Daeron of Doriath's side. Daeron is honestly one of my favorite characters in the Legendarium. I love him. We don't see a lot of him in the Silmarillion version of the Lay of Luthien, but Daeron is a fun character. There's not too much of him known, but my headcanon for him is so strong. Are there any notable elves without daddy issues? Like, for real, though? Finrod? Honestly, like most of the people in the line of Finarfin. Because Finarfin never had any issue with his father. With Finwë. Other than Finwë being killed by Morgoth, but that's not really a daddy issue. So I would honestly say, like, and you know, Finarfin was on good terms with most of his kids. I think it saddened him that his kids left to go to Middle-earth. He tried to counsel them not to, but Finrod and Galadriel especially both wanted to have realms of their own. And I mean, Finrod, amazing elf and an amazing king, and I think he learned that from his father. I think a lot of that was inherited from Finarfin and also his mother Eowyn. They were good parents. The elves need to invest in a mental department. Bit of family therapy, yeah. All of this could have been avoided with the help of a psychologist. No, you're assuming that they would even accept anything that was told. Nah. They'd be like, analyze this. Bye. I'm gonna do what I want. Yeah. Feyenorians wouldn't have taken any mental advice. Not at all. Am I the drama? I don't think I'm the drama. Maybe a little. I am the drama. That's literally Celegorm, though. Like, am I the drama? I don't think I'm the drama. Maybe a little bit. Maybe. He relishes it. He loves being in the spotlight. Celegorm is a preening Chad. Elven psychologist would be a career with a very high mortality rate, especially with the Feyenorians. Yeah, they'd be like, stabbity. We don't like what you say. We don't like your words, mind man. Shall we continue? On an evening of autumn, Feligund and Beren set out from Nargothrond with their 10 companions, and they journeyed beside Narog to his source at the Falls of Ivrin. Beneath the shadowy mountains they came upon a company of orcs, and slew them all in their camp by night. And they took their gear and their weapons. By the arts of Feligund, their own forms and faces were changed into the likeness of orcs, and thus disguised they came far upon their northward road, and ventured into the western pass, between Ered Wethrin and the highlands of Taur Nufuin. But Sauron, in his power, was aware of them, and doubt took him, for they were in haste, and stayed not to report their deeds, as was commanded to all the servants of Morgoth that passed that way. Therefore he sent to waylay them, and bring them before him. Thus befell the contest of Sauron and Feligund, which is renowned, for Feligund strove with Sauron in songs of power, and the power of the king was very great, but Sauron had the mastery, as is told in the Lay of Luthien. And here we get a chunk of the Lay of Luthien. So you will notice that there is a rhyme scheme going on. I love the Lay of Luthien. Okay. He chanted a song of wizardry, of piercing, opening, of treachery, revealing, uncovering, betraying. Then sudden Feligund, there swaying, sang in answer a song of staying, resisting, battling against power, of secrets kept, strength like a tower, and trust unbroken, freedom, escape, of changing and of shifting shape, of snares eluded, broken traps, the prison opening, the chain that snaps. Backwards and forwards swayed their song, reeling and foundering as ever more strong the chanting swelled. Feligund fought, and all the magic and might he brought of Elveness into his words. Softly in the gloom they heard the birds singing afar in Nargothrond, the sighing of the sea beyond, beyond the western world, on sand of pearls in Elvenland. Then the gloom gathered, darkness growing in Valinor, the red blood flowing beside the sea, where the Noldor slew the foam riders, and stealing drew their white ships with their white sails from lamplit havens. The wind wails, the wolf howls, the ravens flee. The ice mutters in the mouths of the sea. The captives sad in Angband mourn. Thunder rumbles, the fires burn, and Finrod fell before the throne. Oh, yeah. Oh my god, I love it. It's so good. Honestly, like, that's the good stuff. That is the good stuff right there. It's so... It rolls off the tongue. It's wonderful poetry. Like, I only messed it up once because I misread one of the words. It has such a wonderful cadence to it. So shout out Tolkien. I love the Lay of Luthien. Such a beautiful visual too. Like, Tolkien gets to really wax poetic, and I love what he does with imagery. So back to the normal verse, unfortunately. We will definitely read the entirety of the Lay of Luthien. I will totally do that on stream. Gotta finish the film first, though. Then Sauron stripped from them their disguise, and they stood before him naked and afraid. But though their kinds were revealed, Sauron could not discover their names or their purposes. He cast them therefore into a deep pit, dark and silent, and threatened to slay them cruelly unless one would betray the truth to him. From time to time they saw 2 eyes kindled in the dark, and a werewolf devoured one of the companions, but none betrayed their lord. In the time when Sauron cast Beren into the pit of a weight of horror came... Oh, sorry. There should be a comma there. In the time when Sauron cast Beren into the pit, a weight of horror came upon Luthien's heart, and going to Melian for counsel, she learned that Beren lay in the dungeons of Tull and Gaurhoth, without hope of rescue. Then Luthien, perceiving that no help would come from any other on earth, resolved to fly from Doriath and come herself to him. But she sought the aid of Daeron, and he betrayed her purpose to the king. Then Thingol was filled with fear and wonder, and because he could not deprive Luthien of the lights of heaven, lest she fail and fade, and yet would restrain her, he caused a house to be built from which she could not escape. Not far from the gates of Menegroth stood the greatest of all the trees in the Forest of Neldoreth, and that was a beech forest, and the northern half of the kingdom. This mighty beech was named Hirelorn, and it had 3 trunks, equal in girth, smooth in rind, and exceedingly tall. No branches grew from them for a great height above the ground. Far aloft between the shafts of Hirelorn, a wooden house was built, and there Luthien was made to dwell, and the ladders were taken away and guarded, save only when the servants of Thingol brought her such things as she needed. Can I just say that's fucked up? Dick move, Thingol. Like, we know he's trying to protect her, but like... Bro, really? It is told in the Lay of Luthien how she escaped from the house in Hirelorn. For she put forth her arts of enchantment, and caused her hair to grow to great length, and of it she wove a dark robe that wrapped her beauty like a shadow, and it was laden with a spell of sleep. Pardon me. Sorry about that. Okay, it was laden with a spell of sleep. Of the strands that remained she twined a rope, and she let it down from her window, and as the end swayed above the guards that sat beneath the tree, they fell into a deep slumber. Then Luthien climbed from her prison, and shrouded in her shadowy cloak, she escaped from all eyes and vanished out of Doriath. Rapunzel who? Dark-haired, though, specifically. It chanced that Celegorm and Curufin went on a hunt through the guarded plain, and this they did because Sauron, being filled with suspicion, sent forth many wolves into the Elflands. Therefore they took their hounds and rode forth, and they thought that ere they returned they might also hear tidings concerning King Feligund. Now the chief of the wolfhounds that followed Celegorm was named Huan. Or Huan. It's probably Huan. Yeah, because that's not a diphthong, so it's Huan. 2 syllables, Huan. He was not born in Middle-earth, but came from the Blessed Realm, for Orome had given him to Celegorm long ago in Valinor, and there he had followed the horn of his master before evil came. Huan followed Celegorm into exile, and was faithful, and thus he too came under the doom of woe set upon the Noldor, and it was decreed that he should meet death, but not until he encountered the mightiest wolf that ever walked the world. Huan it was that found Luthien, flying like a shadow surprised by the daylight under the trees. when Celegorm and Curufin rested a while near to the western eaves of Doriath. For nothing could escape the sight and scent of Huan, nor could any enchantment stay him, and he slept not, neither by night nor day. Huan is the best boy. Juan? No, Huan. That gives me a completely different visual for the sound. But he doesn't sleep, and he's the best boy. He's the bestest boy. He brought her to Celegorm, and Luthien, learning that he was a prince of the Noldor and a foe of Morgoth, was glad, and she declared herself, casting aside her cloak. So great was her sudden beauty revealed beneath the sun that Celegorm became enamored of her. But he spoke her fair and promised that she would find help in her need, if she returned with him now to Nargothrond. By no sign did he reveal that he knew already of Beren and the quest, of which she told, nor that it was a matter which touched him near, because the whole Silmaril thing. Thus they broke off the hunt and returned to Nargothrond, and Luthien was betrayed. For they held her fast and took away her cloak, and she was not permitted to pass the gates or speak with any save the brothers Celegorm and Curufin. And for now, believing that Beren and Feligund were prisoners beyond hope of aid, they proposed to let the king perish, and to keep Luthien, and force Thingol to give her hand to Celegorm. Rude. Thus they would advance their power and become the mightiest of the princes of the Noldor. And they did not propose to seek the Silmarils by craft or war, or to suffer any others to do so, until they had all the might of the elf kingdoms under their hands. Orodreth had no power to withstand them, for they swayed the hearts of the people of Nargothrond, and Celegorm sent messengers to Thingol, urging his suit. Gross. Just honestly, like, Celegorm's like, she pretty, she mine. Dibs. Asshole. Juan. I don't know dogs, okay? I don't know breeds. I don't know breeds. I wouldn't be able to answer that. I do at least know what a Chihuahua is. That's a lot of anger packed in a tiny dog. Ankle biters. Which, I mean, is pretty accurate for Celegorm as a character. I'm just saying. So he sends messengers to Thingol, like, I got your daughter. You don't want her to be with the mortal man, how about me? Thingol's not going to respond well to that. For several reasons, but number one being the kinslaying. Like, he would rather have his entire realm destroyed in open battle with the sons of Feyenoor than have his daughter marry one of them. He'd just be like, I think I threw up in my mouth a little. Yeah. Oh gosh, hairless. No. Yeah, Prince Ethan vibes just got stronger. My sister and her wife next door, they have a pom. Her name is Luna. They call her Luna Bear. Okay. So, yeah, that conversation with Thingol and the messengers from the Feyenorians probably not going to go well. Probably not going to go well. He'd have to let one of them live so that they could take a return message of fuck you back to the Feyenorians. Okay. But Huon the Hound was true of heart, and the love of Luthien had fallen upon him in the first hour of their meeting, and he grieved at her captivity. Therefore he came often to her chamber, and at night he lay before her door, for he felt that evil had come to Nargothrond. Luthien spoke often to Huon in her loneliness, telling of Beren, who was the friend of all birds and beasts that did not serve Morgoth. And Huon understood all that was said, for he comprehended the speech of all things with voice, but it was permitted to him thrice only ere his death to speak with words. Now Huon devised a plan for the aid of Luthien, and coming at time of night he brought her cloak, and for the first time he spoke, giving her counsel. Then he led her by secret ways out of Nargothrond, and they fled north together, and he humbled his pride, and suffered her to ride upon him in the fashion of a steed, even as the orcs did at times upon great wolves. Thus they made great speed, for Huon was swift and tireless. Actually, this is a good place to pause for a moment and show you an illustration. Let's do that. There we go. So that's the way that Ted Nasmith sees Huon. Not a chihuahua. That'd be one big chihuahua, okay? But that is Huon sneaking Luthien out of Nargothrond under the cover of darkness. Look at him go! He's the bestest boy. Good boy. I do think it's rather funny that I didn't catch this the last time I read this. I didn't catch that Beren's like vegan. Beren is vegan. He's like, I'm not eating anything that lives. Nothing. No beast or bird or none of that. None of it. I wonder if maybe he was like a pesca-vegetarian. I don't know if fish would have fallen under the I'm not eating anything that lives. I wonder if fish were included in that or not. Chihuahuas are the quintessential Feyenoorian dog. Yeah, Chihuahuas should not be bigger. What's my favorite illustration in the series? Ooh, that's a tough question. Like illustrations specifically from the Silmarillion? Let me see. There's some of these I've never really seen. Oh, that one's really pretty. I like that. Oh, these are cool. See, I haven't looked ahead. Some of these I've seen, but a lot of these I haven't seen before. Oh, wow, we get a lot of them. I mean, this is one of my favorites. That's Tyrion. That's Eärendil when he gets to Valinor. So that's supposed to be Tyrion on Tuna. Really like this illustration. Let me see. Are there any others that really jumped out at me? I mean, there's also the one of Maglor casting the Silmaril into the sea. It's also on the cover of this version. I have a soft spot for Maglor. But honestly, Ted Nasmith did amazing illustrations. This one's often used on the cover of different versions of the Silmarillion as well. Beautiful. So pretty. Super, super pretty. So yeah, there are a lot of really beautiful illustrations in this book. And some of them are only in this specific edition. This is the 2021 Deluxe Illustrated Hardback. So, he's this one. Here we go. In case you're curious. Illustrated Deluxe Slipcase Edition, published by HarperCollins, 2021. To my knowledge, only 4,000 of these were printed in the first edition, and I have one of them. I got lucky. I'm not sure how easy they are to find, but it's a really pretty edition. It looks a lot lighter of an orange. It looks like a yellow orange on screen, but it's a much deeper orange in person. It's like a fiery red orange. So yeah, it's a really nice edition, but it's definitely not a super common one at this point. Okay. So, honor the Vala of Water. It's time to hydrate. Yeah, you totally did pop in at a good time. Okay. So, we saw Huon carrying Luthien out of Nargothrond, and that's where we paused. Probably going to do just a couple more pages, I think, because this is a very long chapter. Yeah, it's a very long chapter, so I think we're going to break this apart into 2 weeks. That's okay. We can do a rehashing of the story as far as we got, and then continue it for next week's stream. So you guys will get a refresher on the story where we are, and then we'll continue to the completion of the chapter, and maybe beyond if we've got time. I'm a bit more crunched for time today. All right, so let's continue. In the pits of Sauron, Beren and Feligund lay, and all their companions were now dead. But Sauron proposed to keep Feligund to the last, for he perceived that he was a Noldo of great might and wisdom, and he deemed that in him lay the secret of their errand. But when the wolf came for Beren, Feligund put forth all his power and burst his bonds. And he wrestled with the werewolf and slew it with his hands and teeth. Yet he himself was wounded to the death. Can we appreciate for a moment that Finrod Feligund slayed a werewolf with his fucking hands and teeth? With his bare hands and teeth. Bro. He's fucking badass. That's metal as fuck. Yeah, hands and teeth. And teeth. Like, we went there. Thanks, Tolkien. Totally went there. That's not even the end of the paragraph. I just couldn't continue without going, dude. That's so badass. Yet another reason why Finrod is my favorite Elven king. Okay, so he slew it with his hands and teeth, yet he himself was wounded to the death. Then he spoke to Beren, saying,
I go now to my long rest in the timeless halls beyond the sea and the mountains of Aman. It will be long ere I am seen among the Noldor again, and it may be that we shall not meet a second time in death or life, for the fates of our kindreds are apart. Farewell.
He died then in the dark, in Tol and Gaurhoth, whose great tower he himself had built. Thus King Finrod Feligund, fairest and most beloved of the House of Finwë, redeemed his oath, but Beren mourned beside him in despair. It makes me sad every time. So Tol and Gaurhoth is just the name that was given to Minas Tirith. So Minas Tirith is Tol Sirion. I should probably show the map again. But that little island that has the watchtower in between the two mountains, in the pass between the two mountains. Finrod is the one who built Minas Tirith on Tol Sirion. He built this tower. And when he lost the tower to Sauron and the Dark Forces, like, they renamed it to Tol and Gaurhoth. And he dies there. Like, in the tower he himself built. Yes, this is Galadriel's eldest brother. Yeah. Finrod's the best. What a way to go, man. Is sad. In that hour Luthien came, and standing upon the bridge that led to Sauron's Isle, she sang a song that no walls of stone could hinder. Beren heard, and he thought that he dreamed, for the stars shone above him, and in the trees nightingales were singing. And in answer he sang a song of challenge that he had made in praise of the 7 stars, the sickle of the Valar, that Varda hung above the north as a sign for the fall of Morgoth. That's the Valakirka, by the way. Then all strength left him, and he fell down into darkness. But Luthien heard his answering voice, and she sang then a song of greater power. The wolves howled, and the isle trembled. Sauron stood in the high tower, wrapped in his black thought, but he smiled hearing her voice, for he knew that it was the daughter of Melian. The fame of the beauty of Luthien and the wonder of her song had long gone forth from Doriath, and he thought to make her captive, and hand her over to the power of Morgoth, for his reward would be great. Sauron's ambitious, he always was. He also really always wanted to impress Morgoth. Like, not just with signs of loyalty, but he just wanted to impress Morgoth. This is why Angbang is a fandom ship, which is Sauron Morgoth. So he thinks, ooh, I'm gonna capture her. I'm just gonna hand her over to Morgoth because I'll be beloved. I'm gonna impress my boo. Therefore he sent a wolf to the bridge, but Huon slew it silently. Still Sauron sent others one by one Huon took them by the throat and slew them. Then Sauron sent Draugluin, a dread beast, old and evil, lord and sire of the werewolves of Angband. His might was great, and the battle of Huan and Draugluin, not an easy name to say, Draugluin. And the battle of Huan and Draugluin was long and fierce, yet at length Draugluin escaped, and fleeing back into the tower, he died before Sauron's feet. And as he died, he told his master,
Huan is here.
Now Sauron knew well, as did all in that land, the fate that was decreed for the Hound of Valinor, and it came into his thought that he himself would accomplish it. Therefore he took upon himself the form of a werewolf, and made himself the mightiest that had yet walked the world, and he came forth to win the passage of the bridge. So great was the horror of his approach that Huan leapt aside. Then Sauron sprang upon Luthien, and she swooned before the menace of the fell spirit in his eyes and the foul vapor of his breath. Ew. But even as he came, falling, she cast a fold of her cloak before his eyes, and he stumbled, for fleeting drowsiness came upon him. Then Huan sprang. There befell the battle of Huan and Wolf Sauron. And the howls and baying echoed in the hills, and the watchers on the walls of Ered Wethrin across the valley heard it afar and were dismayed. But no wizardry nor spell, neither fang nor venom, nor devil's art nor beast strength, could overthrow Huan of Valinor. And he took his foe by the throat and pinned him down. Then Sauron shifted shape, from wolf to serpent, and from monster to his own accustomed form. But he could not elude the grip of Huan without forsaking his body utterly. Ere his foul spirit left its dark house, Luthien came to him and said that he should be stripped of his raiment of flesh, and his ghost be sent quaking back to Morgoth. And she said,
There everlastingly thy naked self shall endure the torment of his scorn, pierced by his eyes, unless thou yield to me the mastery of thy tower.
Then Sauron yielded himself, and Luthien took the mastery of the isle and all that was there, and Huan released him. And immediately he took the form of a vampire, great as a dark cloud across the moon, and he fled, dripping blood from his throat upon the trees, and came to Tower Nufuin and dwelt there, filling it with horror. Just as a reminder, Tower Nufuin is the same Dorthonion where Beren originally came from. Just for context. Then Luthien stood upon the bridge and declared her power, and the spell was loosened that bound stone to stone, and the gates were thrown down, and the walls opened, and the pits laid bare. And many thralls and captives came forth in wonder and dismay, shielding their eyes against the pale moonlight, for they had lain long in the darkness of Sauron. But Beren came not. Therefore Huan and Luthien sought him in the isle, and Luthien found him mourning by Feligund. So deep was his anguish that he lay still and did not hear her feet. Then, thinking him already dead, she put her arms about him and fell into a dark forgetfulness. But Beren, coming back to the light out of the pits of despair, lifted her up, and they looked again upon one another, and the day rising over the dark hills shone upon them. They buried the body of Feligund upon the hilltop of his own isle, and it was clean again, and the green grave of Finrod Finarfin's son, fairest of all the princes of the Elves, remained inviolate, until the land was changed and broken, and foundered under destroying seas. But Finrod walks with Finarfin, his father, beneath the trees in Eldamar. And I think that's where we're going to pause for today. I think that's where we'll stop for today. Almost pulled a Romeo and Juliet there. Yeah, thank goodness. Thank goodness Tolkien did not go that direction. But then there would be no story. Yeah, no, oh, my dear love is slain. It's better off if I just die. Like, you know, I understand that feel. I've freaking been there. Because I lost my partner and I didn't have a very good time of it. But, yeah, that ain't the answer. On a silly note, Feyenoor and his bros attempt family therapy. Oh no. I'll watch that later. Just because I don't want to get the channel in trouble if it's something that's copyrighted or has music or whatever. I'll check it out though. But yeah. Finrod. Makes me sad. Finrod is such a good character. The silver lining is that when he's reborn, or at least given a new form, when he's released from the halls of Mandos, he walks with his father in Eldamar. And you know his father would just be like, I didn't want you to leave, but you did so well. He'd be so proud of Finrod. Finrod was an awesome, awesome elf. Just making sure it gets nicely in the cover. I try and take good care of these really deluxe editions. Sometimes it's easier than others. There we go. So I think that's where we'll pause for today. We will finish the rest of Beren and Luthien's chapter next week. Yeah, Finrod definitely goes out in like one of the most badass ways. You can tell Tolkien really liked his character. Which is why people are saying that in the Rings of Power trailer, there's a battle like right near the end where you have a character like screaming in battle. People are saying that that's Finrod in battle in the first age. And I'm like, it could be, but I'm not sure why include that? Finrod doesn't have a huge effect on the Second Age. Not really. I don't know what battle they would be referencing from the First Age. Because Finrod wasn't alive by the time we got to like the kinslaying of Doriath or the kinslaying at the Havens of Sirion. It makes more sense that the person in the battle would be Elrond. Though Elrond at that time would be super freaking young. Elrond's only like 30 years old or something. He's super young. At the end of the First Age. So I don't know, but you're right. Finrod does have a really badass. He has a badass death, slaying a werewolf with his bare hands and teeth, and just the whole the spoken enchantment spell work, right? The sorcery of words that he engages in with Sauron beforehand, too. Super badass. And this is one of the reasons that I don't think people give enough credit to bards in general in Tolkien's world. Song has power in Middle-earth. Like, all of this, like all of the enchantment that happens in this part of the book is all song-based. It's Luthien weaving spells of song, and she sings songs and, walls crumble. And, she sings songs and all of this shit happens. Finrod sings a song and battles with Sauron. It's a really cool kind of, like, this is a whole other level of warfare in Middle-earth, and we don't really get to see that very often. But this is why I think that the absence of clear fates for both Maglor and Daeron, the absence of them having clear fates, they just sort of disappear. One day he disappeared. Like, it's true, though. Maglor just sort of disappeared. He wandered along the coastlines lamenting the loss of the Silmaril. Spoiler alert. And Daeron, when he thinks that Luthien is lost, after she runs off with Huon and goes to try and find Beren, Daeron is so distraught that he sets a deep silence over Doriath, because he won't sing, he won't make music, and that's part of the magic of Doriath. And he leaves, he wanders east and just passes out of the knowledge and lore of the elves. Doesn't mean he's dead. Same thing with Maglor. It doesn't mean that either of them necessarily passed and, went to the halls of Mandos. But I think that they took up residence in different realms. I really like the thought that Maglor, he stays in the Vale of Imladris and watches over the valley, protecting it however he can with his own musical magic. And watching over Elrond, because he was basically Elrond's foster father. He's the one who raised Elrond and Elros with Maedhros. So I like the thought that Maglor stays in Imladris. Just like a silent force, adding to the safety of the last homely house. And I like to think that something very similar happens with Daeron going over the Misty Mountains and passing into the Sylvan territory in Greenwood. I like thinking that Daeron ends up just, becoming a Sylvan elf. And so by the time you get Orifer and Thranduil crossing the Anduin and settling in Greenwood with some of the Sindar elves, Daeron's been there for a while and he's like, oh my gosh, hi guys, like I actually know you. And I think that Daeron and his skill with song would help Greenwood withstand Sauron for as long as it did. Like, obviously it's not all powerful, and they didn't have any rings of power to reinforce what they had. So I think Daeron was one of the reasons that the realm of Thranduil didn't fall, when it probably, logistically should have. So we don't talk a lot about, the power of song in Tolkien's world, but this is one of the places where we actually see it. So, I like it. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. I do need to call this to a close. I need to get some food in me, and my mom is currently visiting, so I told her I would be done by noon. It was supposed to be last weekend, but she had to delay, so she needed her car to get worked on before she could visit. Hi, Mom! Yeah, she's not here right now. She's in the other unit with my sister and her wife, so that's kind of the cool thing about having a duplex with my family. My sister and I get along really well. We're actually both non-binary, so I probably should just say sibling and use they, them. My sister and I we're pretty chill with each other about it, just because we're family, and we both know the respect is there for being NB. Do the kitties and the doggo get along? No. They have met. Gray is a very scaredy cat. Gray does not like strangers, people, pets, anything. Gray is very defensive. He's very non-confrontational, though. He's not going to, like, aggressively get up in any visitor's face, but he tends to hide. He tends to just sort of hide whenever something's happening. But Alana is a lot more chill. Alana has cuddled with my mom, with my sister, and Molly. Molly is my sister's wife. And so, yeah, Alana's super chill about it. Alana was on my bed when my sister had Luna, because she's a pom, so she's a really tiny dog. So my sister was just holding her and walking through as I was showing her something that I was working on. And Alana was curious and booped noses with Luna. So my cats are kind of two opposite ends. Alana's curious and super chill, but Gray is like, leave me alone. So they have met. But Luna thinks that everything is there for her to play with, including the cats. And my cats are like, yeah, no thanks. Hell no. So Luna's not allowed in my part of the house, unless she's carried. She can't just run around in here, because my cats would shit themselves. Yeah, and my sister has a cat too. Missy Moo. We call her Missy Moo. Her actual full name is Queen Mistletoe Mookite. No, Queen Mistletoe Mookite Feather Ming Ming Boo. Queen Mistletoe Mookite Feather Ming Ming Boo. That's what my sister named her. AKA Beebs or Missy Moo. Missy. From Mistletoe. Dog is typical dog, cats are typical cats. Exactly. But my cats are not confrontational, whereas Missy Moo, if Luna starts bugging her too much, she'll just go fwap. and Luna will be like, and she'll just sort of trot off and pout. I just want to play. But Missy Moo will play with Luna, but that's because they've shared the house with each other for years, so they get along a lot easier than my cats would. Excuse me. So yeah, I'm gonna go spend time with my family. Probably do a little housewarming shopping, because I know at least my sister and her wife, they both need a lot of little things for their kitchen. Family! I love my family. I'm super lucky. I'm super lucky that I have a really good relationship with my parents. My dad and I butt heads a lot. Ideologically, we were polar opposites, and so that makes us great a little bit. But my mom's a bit more chill. So even when we don't agree, she's a lot more chill about it. Hey, thank you. Yeah, you guys have a good weekend too. So I'm currently still banned from doing lives on TikTok, but that ban should lift by tomorrow. I was temporarily banned from living because of hateful behavior. So apparently me calling out racist bullshit is hateful. I sent an appeal, but whatever. I'm just like, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen when I get impassioned and call it how it is. So I'm absolutely fine having good faith arguments with people about the way that Amazon is handling the rights that they got from the appendices. I'm totally cool having conversations about it. But yeah, I'm gonna call it how I see it. And I think a lot of people's opinions are fueled by, these microaggressive, internalized racism. How dare, I know, right? At least I'm not the only one. At least Dawn and I are very, we are of one mind when it comes to this stuff. It's like, we're not gonna tolerate it. We're not gonna take it. Because I'd be willing to have a talk with, like, I think Ace Condor put up a video that I think, you know, it's reinforcing arguments that I have heard from other people. And he does so eloquently, and I agree with some of his takes on how problematic it is that that so many original characters are being made. Because he doesn't mind the skin tone quite so much, but he does mind. Whereas I'm like, it's such a low priority. I'm like, I don't think it matters. Yeah, like, I mean, that's what we want to do more than anything. Me, Don, and Nubetta, we really want fandom to be a welcoming space for all people, and that means that intolerance is intolerable. But this is our vision for fandom, right? And that's not going to jive with everybody, and that's okay, and that's why we're going to have people that we butt heads with or disagree with. Me and Ace Condor right now are disagreeing with each other. It's at least a good faith discussion with fellow TikTok creators. Like, none of us are trying to be a-holes to each other, and so there's a certain respect that we have for each other, but we absolutely disagree on certain points. But there are other points that I totally agree with. Like, he was just like, we're talking about original characters in original places, playing out original stories. And he's like, and that's fan fiction, and that's not what I signed up for. And I'm like, that's fair. I don't mind there being a fan fiction element to it, especially knowing how restricted they are in what they actually bought the rights to. Because I really should make a series of videos that explain what exactly is in the appendices and what is not in the appendices. Because I think people are expecting a lot more stuff to be in the show that cannot be in the show legally, unless they got written exceptions from the Tolkien estate, which I know some stuff they did. But, like, we need to assume that they only have the rights to the appendices. And that, while that is 150 pages, that doesn't detail a lot of stuff. Like, it doesn't mention Sauron in Anatar form. It never mentions the name Anatar. Celebrian is only mentioned as, you know, her wedding date. She's only mentioned in the vague timeline of the Third Age. She's not mentioned at all in the Second Age section of the appendices. So we probably won't see Celebrian in the show because she's not in the Second Age. She's not mentioned in the appendices. She probably was alive during that period, but she doesn't wed Elrond until early in the Third Age. So, and people are like, where's Celeborn? Like, Galadriel's married this whole time. And I'm like, yeah, but Celeborn doesn't show up in the appendices. He's never named in the appendices. So there's a lot of stuff that I think people are like, what the hell? And I'm like, if all they have rights to is the appendices, then there are going to be a lot of blank spaces. The upstairs and downstairs elves. Like Downton Abbey, but with elven civilizations. Gosh, one would hope it wouldn't be quite like that. Elves in general tend to be relatively egalitarian. I don't think they would buy into that. Because there are some that are, like, taken as lords. And then there are assholes like the Feyenoorians who demand lordship and actively seek power and prestige. But usually not so much. Elves tend to... There's no currency ever discussed for the elves, so it's just sort of assumed that they're on more of a barter egalitarian system of economy. I mean, it also helps that elves can't starve to death, so there's not as much need for ample food. Elves can't starve to death, and they can't be killed by the elements, so They're a hardy folk in their own way. Kitchen drama of Gondolin. Oh lord. No! No! If anything, it would be the kitchen drama of Nargothrond, okay? And honestly, Nargothrond would make a fascinating place for an original story to come out of. But again, you'd have to get the rights to the first stage, and that's never going to freaking happen. Tolkien Estate is never going to let those go if they can help it. If they do, it's going to be horrendously expensive. Oh, I know what you mean by upstairs, though. I know what you mean. I think there's more of that present in the way that Nargothrond is written about. I think there's more of that with the downstairs and upstairs. Than there would be in like a place like Doriath. I think that you would have more in Nargothrond based on like the different political intrigue that happens there. Because Doriath, it's just King Thingol the entire time. He rules and everyone's happy to just let him rule. He's been the leader of that sect of the Sindar for the entire time. Since the Great Journey. So I don't think his rule is ever in question, but Finrod, like, he establishes the realm with the help of the dwarves because he's awesome and makes friends with everyone. But the moment you have Celegorm and Curufin there, you know, raising their own sort of, you know, sect of people, and then the people who end up being loyal to Orodreth or not, you would have a lot more political intrigue in Nargothrond than you would in the other elven realms in the First Age. The mundane gossip would be hilarious. Well, I mean, and poor Gwyndor. My favorite character is Gwyndor. And, you know, Gwyndor goes off to war. You know, he loses his brother. He comes back alone. He goes to another battle later in the Second Age, or later in the First Age. And his brother's put to death in front of him, so he storms the gates and he gets captured by the Dark Forces. And he's there for a while. He's there for, I think, at least a decade, if not two. And so he's captured by the Dark Forces, and by the time he comes back, he looks like an aged old mortal man. Because he's been tortured for that entire time, and working in the mines for Sauron and Morgoth. But when he comes back, he brings Turin with him, and then his betrothed, Finduilas, the princess, who's, you know, supposed to be the daughter of Orodreth, who is king at the time. So he's been betrothed to Finduilas, and when he brings Turin back, Finduilas falls for Turin and breaks off her engagement with Gwyndor. Can you imagine the gossip? Can you imagine? And Gwyndor goes from being, you know, a prince of the Noldor to being someone who's outcast because nobody trusts him. And so he's constantly like, dude, all of this bad stuff is going to happen if you try and meet Morgoth in open battle. Don't do it. Don't give up the location of this secret realm. Don't do it. And nobody listens. So I mean, like, the drama in specifically Nargothrond would be really fun. It'd be really fun. From prince to just some guy. Yeah. From prince to this guy was a thrall in Morgoth's service, and we can't trust that he's not still under some sort of mind control from Morgoth. Because Morgoth did that on purpose. He would willingly release certain prisoners knowing that he had control of their minds, so that they would report back to him. He would just overpower their wills. But in Gwyndor's case, that did not happen. He was loyal to the elves. Never gave up any information. Gwyndor was the bestest boy when it came to loyal elves. And he was just completely disregarded. Everyone wanted to listen to Turin because he was young and attractive, and the princess was in love with him, so that immediately endeared him to the people. Whereas Finduilas, being a shallow bitch, was like, when she saw Gwyndor when he came back. It's terrible. So yeah, I feel for Gwyndor. Gwyndor deserves all the love in the world. And that's why I constantly was playing with him with role-playing with my partner and writing fan fiction with him. We paired him up with Thranduil, and they heal each other's hearts, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But Gwyndor deserves love. He deserves all the love. He was a sweet character and just got shat on the entire time. On that note, I think we will call it to an end, but thank you everybody for hanging out with me today. Little more than halfway through Beren and Luthien. Got a good chunk done, so we got to basically the death of Finrod Feligund and the escape of Beren and Luthien from Tolsirion, or Toren Glauhoth. My bad. Yeah, happy Saturday. So if I don't have another live in the meantime, I will at least see you guys next Saturday, and we'll finish up this chapter and maybe get started on the next one. So everybody, please take care. I love you guys. I'll see you guys next time.
Hello and goodbye.
Bye guys, I'll see you next week.